there, and welcome to our show, The Shit No One Tells You About Writing. I'm Bianca Murray, and I'm joined by Carly Waters and Cece Lira from PS Literary Agency.
Hi, everybody. It is me, Carly Waters, as your author interview host today. Bianca gets a week off because I get to talk with one of my authors. This is Bailey Hanna, and I'm going to introduce Bailey to everybody. I'm sure you've heard me talking about Bailey on socials. I can't stop talking about her cowboys, and I will give you guys the official welcome about Bailey. So,
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here. I watch and listen to the podcast quite often. So even before you were my agent, so this is cool.
No, it's great. We're so happy to have you. You know, I think a lot of authors who have listened to this show, a lot of writers who have listened to the show over the years, they know my taste is very eclectic. I work on everything from romance to serious nonfiction, absolutely everything in between. So this one is, again, one of my most commercial, most fun projects to work on, and this is just an absolute blast. So I'm excited for everybody that doesn't know Bailey to introduce everybody to her series, which is the Wells Ranch series. Introduce you guys to the world and kind of talk about how Bailey and I started working together. So why don't we start off, Bailey, by you introducing us to kind of Wells Ranch, the place and the series in your own words, and then tell everybody about this world you created.
So Wells Ranch is a fictional place. There are some places that kind of have similar names to actual places in BC, and I didn't do that consciously. It was just kind of a subconscious, oops. But it's based, I took a lot of my favorite parts of BC, which is where I was born and raised, and put them all into one place and stuck a cattle ranch in the middle of it, which is where all of our stories are kind of centered around. But then, of course, they veer off into the small town that neighbors the ranch and that sort of thing. And it follows a family, the Wells family, and they've been ranching in the BC interior for 100 years. And now it's the three of the sons that are running it, and they're all finding love, them and some of their ranch hands as well, because they're kind of all like brothers anyways. So
yes, well, everybody has to read the books to kind of get the full sense of it. But I always say from the minute, I read any of these pages and read the first book in the series that Wells Ranch is a very real place to me. It's very visceral. I feel like I can close my eyes and I can be there. And I was joking with you on social media today. I'm like, I want to get on a plane and be there and hang out with all my favorite guys and gals. Because it is a really real place. So let's walk us through your kind of publishing journey, because I think one of the things that's interesting about you and about our working relationship is that you had self-published these titles. And we get this question all the time, whether it's on the show or I get this question personally about what happens when you self-publish and then maybe you want to do traditional, or it's like trying to figure out what that path looks like for you. So maybe walk us through, kind of your foray into self-publishing and when you felt like you needed extra help or you were ready to make the leap to traditional.
Yeah, so when I initially decided that I wanted to finally publish a book after talking about it my entire life, I, as we all do, I didn't really know much about self-publishing. So instantly I was like, okay, traditional publishing it is. And I spent a lot of time querying agents and doing that entire thing. And I mean, it's anyone who's done it before knows that it's not the most fun process most of the time, right? It's a lot of rejection. And so and obsessing too, right? You're constantly checking your email. Has anyone gotten back to me? And then you send out a full manuscript and you're just sitting there on pins and needles. So I started writing Alive and Wells while that was all going on, just to give myself something else to focus on. And during that process and during the querying process, I got more involved in Book Talk and Bookstagram. And that's where I was seeing authors self-publishing and having a lot of great success with it. And especially in the small town romance kind of subgenre, I was like, oh, this is something I could maybe try and do. And I was still querying while I was going through the whole self-pub process. And then, I put it out there and kind of just was like, I just want to have a book out there. I don't care how it goes out there. I just want it out into the world just to say I did it. And so then once I did it, it was really well received, more than I thought it would ever be. It blew up way beyond what I thought would happen. And so then that's when all of a sudden I had an audiobook company reach out to me about buying audio rights. And then I had an actual publishing house reach out. And at first I thought that was a scam. And again, that was really, I was like, okay, with the audio thing, I was able to talk to a bunch of other authors who had done that, because that's really common in the self-pub world, where you sort of negotiate your own audio deals and that sort of thing. But then when a true trad deal was all of a sudden placed in front of me, I was like, ooh, this is way beyond what I know anything about. I do not feel comfortable trying to negotiate for myself or trying to even just read through the offer letter that they sent over. So then that's when I frantically was like, okay, let's reach out to some of those agents that I had initially queried and see what comes of this, see if somebody will help me, basically. That's how we landed here with you, which is great.
We'll come back to that point. I want to just rewind a little
Mhm.
bit to the editing process. So talk to me
Yeah.
about what that was like. As you said, you obviously went through this yourself. Did you hire an editor? What kind of support
Yeah.
did you set yourself up for success with in the self-publishing space?
Yeah, so the two things that I decided I was going to actually invest money in, because it can get expensive really quickly. And I didn't know that so many people never do earn out on their first book, right? But I decided I was going to spend money on an editor and the cover. And so that's what I did. I found a great cover designer and a great editor. And yeah, that was really, I think those are like the two most necessary things, because those are the two things that are actually going to have people pick up your book and then talk about your book after they've read it. If they pick it up because it has a pretty cover, but inside is just a hot mess, then they're probably not going to tell their friends to go read it. So yeah, so I did all that myself. Yeah,
Yeah. No, and it really showed. I mean, so let's pick up where you kind of were ending that story. So yeah, so I got an email from Bailey saying, I have an offer in hand. This is my series. This is what it's about. And right away, I don't know. I feel like I'd been looking for a small town romance series to work on for a really long time. And I think romance as a genre, we can kind of get to this, has kind of waxed and waned in terms of the favor or marketability or, how it's received in the marketplace. And, it's always been something I'd wanting to work on, but it's really hot right now in many ways, whether it's spicy hot or hot as a category. And so it just felt like, the right time. So I read it right away. I think I read it that weekend and I was like, where's the next book in the series? I think I
yeah,
emailed you on the Monday. I was like, I know there's more books and I need them now. And I felt like one
yeah,
of your book talk fans. I was like, I need more. Yeah, and they're really, incredible books. And I think one of the things that you do so well and one of the things that really sets you apart is as I said, you have the world building, you have this like deep rich characterization where we really feel like both the male lead and the female lead have their own like personal journeys they're on. They're very kind of rich and deep in terms of the subject matter they're dealing with. It's everything from family health challenges to fertility challenges to abortion and domestic violence. Like you're covering the gamut in terms of these real life, real world issues in such a thoughtful way. And then we have our open door romance scenes as well. So we have like absolutely everything that anybody could want in terms of entertainment value, which I think is just so powerful. And so, we don't have to get into the specifics about like deal making and things like that, but Bailey and I went through the process of kind of evaluating, what was the right fit for her in terms of the right traditional deal. And sometimes, there's a lot of, conversation back and forth about what's the right fit and what does it look like. And just because somebody gets an offer doesn't mean they have to accept an offer, and kind of working our
yeah,
way to what we felt like was the right fit for you, which was at the Valentine Bantam Dell imprint and under the Dell umbrella for romance. And yeah, we're in the midst of all the marketing, as you guys know. Ahead of publication is when we kind of do all of the pre-pub marketing plans. So we are in it and recording ahead of time here.
yeah.
And the book that we are going to be kind of talking about on socials right now, as you guys are listening, is Change of Heart. So, Bailey, why don't you tell us about Change of Heart, which is the third book in the Wells
Mhm.
Ranch series?
So, Change of Heart is about the youngest of the three Wells brothers, Denver. You see a lot of him in the first two books. He's very much the goofy youngest brother that we all know and love. And he's got a bit of a playboy reputation, but that all we come to find out sort of stems from his high school sweetheart leaving. And they broke up after graduation. She moves to the big city. It's really angsty. There's a lot of emotions, and they're 18 and they don't necessarily make the best choices. So they break up. She's gone and she doesn't come back, and he doesn't think that she's ever going to come back. So he kind of is just out there playing the field, doing whatever, just getting by day to day. And then Blair, our female protagonist, comes back because her mother is diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and it's just getting to be a little bit too much for the family for her dad to take care of her mom all on his own. And she's a nurse practitioner, so it works out well for her to come back and work in the clinic in town and take care of her mom. But of course, it's a small town, so that means that she can't really avoid her ex-boyfriend, and they're just sort of thrown together. And it also, of course, small town life, her best friend is with his best friend. They're the couple from book 2. So they just keep having that forced proximity where they just kind of keep running into each other. And then eventually it kind of comes out, of course, because it's romance, that they've always loved each other. Both of them have been feeling this way for a long time. And yeah, it's just really angsty and hot and spicy and sweet. And yeah, I love them so much.
I know. I love this one so much. And the second chance romance, what do you think it is about a second chance romance that always gets everybody? What do you think it is?
I think it's the angstiness. Like, if you want to pick up a book where you're almost guaranteed to cry at some point, like Second Chance is a pretty sure bet, because you know that they have to break up at some point. And then, yeah, it's just the sweet, them kind of rediscovering who they are and falling back in love. That's really sweet. There's one line where Blair says that, like, how lucky is she that she got to love this man twice in the same lifetime. So,
Yeah, no, it's so beautiful. So talk to me about your relationship with Book Talk. And I know, TikTok has been all over the place in terms of accelerating, the growth of the book business and kind of making sure that romance is kind of getting its star treatment right now. But then there was also like, is TikTok going to go away? And then it came back and up and down, all of the emotional roller coaster of TikTok. But we cannot deny the power that it has in terms of connecting readers with books. And so, yeah, walk me through what your relationship is like, whether it's with your fans or the app or the hashtag.
yeah, it's really, I think, especially for self-published authors, it's really changed the landscape. It's just made authors so much more accessible, and readers can find you and find your books, even if you're a newly self-published author and your books aren't on the shelves in the bookstores or wherever. They're not being featured in magazines and all of these places where you might find traditionally published books. But it's just people have so much power. The influencers on Book Talk and Bookstagram, it is wild, so wild. I mean, when I first published, I only had a few hundred followers. I wasn't anybody. And it really just took a couple of those people who have 100,000 or 50,000 or 10,000 followers to just share about my books a couple times. And that's all it took for things to just blow up. So it's wild. And I know everyone that I'm friends with was stressing, still is a little bit, about TikTok going away, because then it's just, is there ever going to be anything that's going to have quite as much power as Book Talk has had? I don't know. So
yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, and it's still continuing to sustain, a lot of the business and a lot of that word of mouth. So yeah, no, we definitely can't deny its power. Okay, so let's come back to what you were saying about a book has to be really well written in order for people to kind of recommend it to a friend. So how did you, develop your craft and learn your craft and win that confidence as an author? Walk us through your kind of craft journey.
So I've been writing ever since I was a little kid. I was the kid in elementary school entering writing contests, like as if I thought I was going to win against adults who had probably been writing for 30 plus years, and I was 12. But I just loved it, and so I carried that throughout the rest of my life. And I kind of veered off and got a biology degree, but still kept taking all my university electives in creative writing and that sort of thing. And then I just spent a lot of time reading. And then when I decided finally that I actually wanted to write and try and publish something, Alive and Wells wasn't my first full novel that I wrote. So I wrote one. It was awful. It was terrible. Like, I feel so bad for the one girl who read it. It was a mess. And then I wrote another one, and that was the one that I was querying. And even still, probably needs some work. Like, there's a reason why nobody wanted it. But yeah, so it was just that repetition and, just really using that writing muscle and just getting into it. And then once it was written, having beta reader after beta reader read through it, give me feedback, and take that. Don't necessarily use all of that because it's all subjective, but just having those readers. And they also, not only are they giving you critical feedback, but the positive feedback is so helpful too, to kind of boost that confidence, because it's scary writing a book and putting it out there for people to read, not having any idea how they're going to perceive it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing, we don't have to say exactly where you live, but you live out in the country. You're not in a major
Yeah.
city. And so, you don't have access to kind of in-person writing groups necessarily. So
Yeah.
what are some of the online ways that you keep in touch with writer friends and things like that?
So at first it was Facebook before I really dove into Bookstagram or Book Talk. And there's so many groups out there for authors at every stage of their journey, and whether they're self-published or they're traditionally published, or they're in the process of querying, you can find community just through that. And then I joined Bookstagram and Book Talk kind of in the lead up to releasing Alive and Wells, and I've made so many friends, so many friends, including, authors who are extremely successful. And they're great because when I all of a sudden received that offer out of nowhere, I was able to send a text to another author who I knew had just recently gotten a traditionally published deal, being like, what do I do? And she kind of like calmed me down a little bit. It's so nice to have all of these people that I've been able to become friends with on Bookstagram, especially. Book Talk's a little bit different of a community. Bookstagram to me feels much more close knit. We're all communicating every day. We're all DMing every day and in these group chats. So yeah, I think anybody who kind of needs that, you just go make the account and just start putting yourself out there. Start commenting, start engaging, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, you have this really great friend group of both readers and other authors who you can talk to, and you can sit there. Some of like my best nights are just spent sending voice notes back and forth with a couple of my author friends, and we're just brainstorming and we're coming up with book ideas, and it's so much fun. So yeah, I don't think you need to have the in-person necessarily. You can find your people anywhere.
Yeah, I love that. I was talking with somebody in DM this weekend about voice notes and how underutilized they are. Voice notes are an incredible way to kind of
I
convey
love
what you're
them.
trying to say. Yes,
Yeah.
they're incredible.
Sometimes my hands are just tired and I just want to
Yeah.
talk, right? Like, I don't want to type anymore. I'm done with typing.
I know. I feel like that too because I'm like, I'm typing emails all day. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe we just
Sometimes
need a
it's so
voice note at the end of
nice.
the day.
And you can walk
Yes.
around and do chores in your house. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, my friends and I call it our daily podcast, because all of a sudden you've sent 20 minutes to somebody and you're like, oops, sorry. It's just great.
I love that. I love that. Some
Yeah.
people post their podcasts, some just text them to each other.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so to walk me through your relationship with going to conventions and things like that. So we've talked about the online world, but you do travel and go to conventions and cons. Do you want to walk us
Yeah.
through how you started going to those and what those are like and where you're going this year and where you're connecting with people?
Yeah. So it was all Bookstagram again, because you see these other authors doing it and you see readers going there. And then all of a sudden readers are asking you, hey, where are you going next year? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Where am I going? And I had a little bit of imposter syndrome in the beginning, especially. And I told myself, I'm not going to even apply for any of these because I am so scared to just sit there and nobody cares. Nobody knows who I am. So
You don't
I
want to be the lonely
waited.
person at the table.
Exactly. I don't want to just have to sit there like twiddling my thumbs with a fake smile on all day, hoping somebody comes over to talk to me. So I waited. And then there's a really great book signing event that happens in the Rockies every year called Romance Invades the Canadian Rockies. And they reached out to me because they had a couple people cancel for this past July. And so then I was like, okay, if they're asking me, then that obviously means that people do know who I am. So fine, I guess I'll go. And then I started kind of just applying to other cons where it seems like there's a lot of my readers that might be there, or there's a lot of other authors that kind of write in the same genre, or some of them just seem fun. Like at this point, there's so many cons and signings out there that I kind of also just pick based on where I would like to go on vacation. So I'm like, hey, a weekend in Vegas? That sounds like fun. I'm like, oh, next year a weekend in San Diego? Sure. Yeah, that sounds like a fun time. We'll bring the family, we'll go to the zoo, we'll make it a whole thing. So, yeah, and it's fun. I was really scared for the first one, but it's just nothing beats actually meeting these people face to face and having them tell you how much they love your books, or crying even because of some. I mean, obviously there's so many heavy topics in my books that I do get a lot of people being like, hey, this really helped me through some hard times, or whatever, it made me feel seen. And so then we have a little cry about it together, and that's good. It's like sustenance, keeps me going.
Yeah, that's so emotionally draining though. Like, so I've been to a lot of
Yeah.
conferences, writers conferences, but I don't cry with people usually.
Oh,
So that's emotional.
it's a yes. Yeah. And I am definitely an introvert. So it is very draining. Afterwards, I'm like, okay, I need a few days by myself. Nobody talk to me. But
Yeah, that's why I have to
it's
tack the
great.
vacation on after where you're going.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who are some of your favorite authors? Who do you like to read, or who do you study from? Where do you get inspiration from? Talk to me about your reading habits.
Oh, I am such a mood reader. I am all over the place. I grew up on historical fiction, loved it. That's really where I thought I was going to go. And maybe one day, I mean, historical romance is not really having its moment right now, but at some point, maybe it'll kind of have a little resurgence, and I would love to dive into that. But it's a lot of research and a lot of care and time needs to be put into that. So that's not something that I would just take on lightly, you know? But yeah, I read a lot of romance, a lot. That's when people are like, "Oh, how did you choose what genre to write?" And I'm like, "Well, romance just felt like the most obvious choice because that's already primarily what I read." But there's a lot of Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is not romance, but just, it's fun. All of her books are great and have that historical element that I love. So that's really what drew me in there in the first place. And then I read a lot of indie authors. I wouldn't say there's necessarily like one author. There's no author out there where I can say I've read their entire backlist, because I'm just such a mood reader that I read one or two of their books and I'm like, okay, cool, on to the next. And then maybe I'll circle back in a couple years and read a couple more of their books. But yeah, I'm just kind of all over the place. I'll read
Oh, that's
anything. I'll read monster smut, I'll read romantic suspense, I'll read all of it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so I want everybody to know how fast of a writer you are. You're pretty speedy. So walk us through what your drafting and writing process is like, because it's a bit
Yeah.
on the speedy side, which is maybe why
Yes.
self-publishing spoke to you.
When it's speedy, it's speedy. Sometimes not so much. Sometimes I'm sitting here just like pulling my hair out because I can't think about what to write next. But once that story starts flowing, it flows fast. I just, I mean, I, up until very recently, up until mid-December, was working a full-time job, and I have a 4.5-year-old. So it's very much just writing whenever I can. A lot of times it's on my phone. I'm laying there, like after my daughter's fallen asleep, and I'm just laying in her room writing on my phone, or I'm killing time before a doctor's appointment or whatever. And even now that I've quit my job, I still have her around. So it's still a lot of just kind of squeezing it in whenever I can. But yeah, once that story starts flowing, it's good. I mean, I wrote Alive and Wells in a month. So it just, yeah, it plays. I've explained this to people before who, it's so wild to me how some people can't see a picture in their head. Because for
Mhm.
me, these are just playing essentially like movies in my head, and I'm just transcribing whatever I see. Like, so that's why it's so fast once it starts really rolling. And then once in a while it has to stop and buffer for a minute. I'm lost. But yeah, once it's rolling, I'm just sitting here zoned right out, typing away. So
Oh, it's incredible. And I do find your
mhm.
writing very, very cinematic. Okay, well, you touched on the previous job thread there. So I want to pull on that thread, which is talk to us about what it's like to have this kind of, you had a dual persona for a while as
I did.
writing smutty novels and then having a day job. So walk us through
Yeah.
some of the stories behind having to navigate those two worlds.
I felt like I was joking constantly online about feeling like I was Bailey Hannah Montana because I just had these dual personalities, and nobody knew, which was, at first I didn't tell anybody, and then I told my mom, and she posted on Facebook, as moms tend to do, you know. So then, you know, some people found out in my personal life, but I didn't have any of my coworkers on Facebook or anything, so none of them knew. And even, you know, when I went to Calgary for that book signing, or I went to Vegas, I was just like, it's a girls' trip. I'm going away for a girls' trip this weekend. Didn't tell them anything. So it caught most of them off guard when I all of a sudden quit and told them why I was quitting. But I did get a little bit found out before that, because I gave an author talk at our local library, and our local library was right next door to where my office was. And they had a big, huge poster with my face when you walk into the libraries. I quickly found out which of my coworkers frequent the library, because then they were good. It was not a very gossipy office, clearly, because they kept their mouths shut. But yeah, so it was kind of fun. And then it
Maybe
was
they didn't
it
want
was
to
a
be
lot
found
of
out.
fun.
Yeah, maybe they didn't want to be
Maybe.
found out to be being like, what kind of things do you read? Okay, maybe it was not what they thought
maybe.
that they would want to be told. People, you know, tell people that they're reading.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about it either. Yeah.
At work.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what is it like to be a full-time author? What is it? What does it feel?
Surreal still. It's so nice though. It's so nice to not have to feel like I'm juggling all the things.
Mhm.
And especially when it comes to my daughter now, because before it would be like, okay, well, I have to sit down and write at some point. And so sometimes that meant not getting to like hang out with her on a Saturday or something. Whereas now it's just, oh, okay, if she has something that she needs to go do, you know, Tuesday mornings, she has gymnastics, and that's fine. We can just go, and I'm like, I'll write later, or I'll write tomorrow. It's not, obviously at this point, I'm very close to a deadline. So that's a little different now for the next couple weeks. But outside of that, it's just nice to, yeah, be able to just fit it in whenever I want, and not be trying to squeeze writing time in every single chance that I get, every little bit of free time I get. So I get to enjoy my family and have better self-care, like just relax and read and do things for myself. So
Yeah, and claim it as a career, right? Because when you're juggling multiple
yeah.
things, you know, it's like where, how many directions
I
can I possibly be
know.
pulled in?
And I
Yeah,
get to
which
just
is
talk to
challenging.
people about like romance books. And when I was sending voice notes to my one friend, and I was like, how great is this that we get to talk about sex and this is our job? That's
It's
fantastic. We get
it's
to sit
great.
here and brainstorm a spicy scene and say that we're working, which is
You
fun.
are.
Yeah.
I know I always have a smile on my face when I'm pitching romance, especially spicy romance. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's my job just being like to convince people that they need to put down everything else they're doing and
Yes.
read this spicy novel. That's a great thing to call my job.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to go back to kind of the world building piece because it seems like for you it is so natural, you know, the way that you are able to kind of build out this world and how it seems so real to you in your own mind. Like walk us through how you consciously think about the world creation and the scenes that you're creating, you know, the sensory experience that you're trying to create for the reader. Just walk us through that world building consciousness that you have.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, it plays like a movie in my head, and I just kind of write it just like that. And I know a lot of authors utilize things like Pinterest and that sort of stuff to get some ideas, but it's just a lot of my favorite places. And so it doesn't take much for me to visualize that and then put it on paper. Um, and a lot of the more detailed description or kind of more flowery language will come in during edits, of course. But yeah, it just comes really easy to me because I'm taking parts of my real world and my world experience and just putting it onto page. So I think I might have a harder time, and it's also why I'm not a big fantasy writer, because I can't visualize that so much. It's not when it's not real, and it's not what I can look out my window and see. So
Yeah. No, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. I think it's just so picturesque and beautiful. And you're like, I just look out my window and this is what
Yeah,
I see. So it's great.
literally right out my
But
window. It's fantastic.
yeah, we get to be transported to your world and your life. All right, so let's walk everybody through the series itself. So we have our Wells Ranch series, we have our Alive and Well. So, just for anybody that doesn't know, we ended up selling the self published titles to Ballantine Bantam Dell. They immediately were able to have the ebooks available for the first two books. And then we have since published the paperback editions of Alive and Wells. That one came out on March 23rd. Seeing Red came out on April 29th. So those physical books are available. And the very exciting thing, which nobody has read outside of the beta readers and the early readers, is Change of Heart. So I know that so far you've been, as I said, talking with a lot of people who have read the books in the series. So what is it going to be like for people to read Change of Heart after they have been waiting for months and months, living with the first two books in the series? Now they get book three.
They have been waiting so long. So long. Which was kind of part of the quick rollout for the first two, was to not keep them waiting even longer, because initially they thought they would be getting Change of Heart in September of 2024. So it's a long wait. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little worried when the first started going out, that I was like, ooh, are they going to be like underwhelmed because they've waited so long? But that has definitely not been the case. Everyone is just so thrilled to finally be getting it. And now we won't have to wait quite as long for the last two books in the series. So that's good.
The arc came into my office this week, and I was showing it on socials this week. As you guys know, we record ahead of time. But yeah, I'm so excited for everybody.
I know.
Everybody, you don't want to pick a favorite, of course. It's like, how do you pick a favorite child or a favorite horse or a favorite animal? Like, anything, right? But like, for a lot of people, I think this might be, their favorite thus far, like, you're going deep. We have, again, these recurring characters. We have the second chance romance and such familiarity already with the world. So I think people are just going to can't wait to plug back into it. So I can't wait for everybody to have access to it.
It seems to be a lot of people so far from the early reviews seem to be switching teams, and they're Team Denver now.
Yeah. It's like, the little brother's all grown up.
Right. And a lot of people honestly have loved him since the very first book too, just because of that playful goofiness. A lot of people love that. We love the golden retriever type hero. So yeah, a lot of people have been waiting very sort of impatiently sometimes for his story.
Gems, I'm sure. Yeah, I wouldn't say patient is what everybody is. No. That means everybody's excited to read it. Yes, in the best way possible. Yeah, is there any last, I usually like to end off with, is there any writing advice that you really want to give to the, the newbie writers or the aspiring authors that are listening to our show? Is there any kind of words of wisdom you want to leave everybody with?
Just write the book. Just write it. I wasted so much of my life just not, or starting them and getting so lost in all of the things that you're told you should do. You should have all of these characters already all mapped out, and you should know everything about them before you start the book, or you should plot it right down to the scene. And that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So I think you need to just put all that aside and just sit down and write the book. And it might not be good. Like I said, the first one I wrote, not great. But just do it. And then you're flexing that writing muscle, and it just gets easier and easier. So, yeah.
No, it's incredible advice. That's just what we have to do, right? Nobody's going to do it but you. You just got to sit down and do the thing.
Yeah. If you don't do it, nobody's going to tell that story. So just do it.
Yeah. Well, great advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Bailey, talking about your experiences. I know we have a number of authors that always ask the question about self-publishing versus traditional, can you have it all? And I think the answer is yes, you can have it all if you want to have it all, as long as you're writing books that really connect with readers, which is obviously what your wonderful Wells Ranch series does. So I'm thrilled to be your agent, thrilled to be working on this, and so excited to see what everybody says about Change of Heart, because I know it's a smash hit. So congratulations.
Thank you. I can't wait for everybody to read it.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Today's guest is the author of the award-winning New York Times bestselling Lady Julia Gray series, as well as the USA Today bestselling and Edgar Award nominated Veronica Speedwell mysteries and several standalone works. It's my pleasure to welcome back Deanna Raybourn. Deanna, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that we're both wearing red lipstick today.
I know, right? We've got to channel all the fierce female energy we possibly can in this world. And I find nothing does it better than red lipstick.
Preach.
Yeah. Okay. So for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm holding up the book cover. It's amazing. Kills Well with Others. And this is the highly anticipated sequel to Killers of a Certain Age, which was a contemporary feminist tale brimming with acerbic wit, featuring modern heroines who prove that age can be an asset in a world that often values youth over wisdom. It became a blockbuster success. It received rave reviews from everyone. It was featured in 2 on-air recommendations on NBC's Today. A GMA Buzz Pick selection, landed myriad Best of the Year lists, won the illustrious Barry Award for Best Thriller, and received 4-starred reviews from major publishing trade outlets. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, it sounds
So
great when you say it like that.
Right? I'm like feeling like we need trumpets and drums as we just read this, which is amazing. So the book that we're discussing today, as I said, is the sequel. Let me read the flap copy for our listeners so that they have context. After more than a year of laying low, Billy, Helen, Mary Alice, and Natalie are called back into action. They have enjoyed their time off, but the lack of excitement is starting to chafe. A professional killer can only take so many watercolor classes and yoga sessions without itching to strangle someone. Literally. Okay, now I'm starting to suspect I may be a closeted serial killer. Yeah, no. But anyway, when they receive a call from the head of the elite assassin organization known as the Museum, they are ready to tackle the greatest challenge of their careers. Someone on the inside has compiled a list of important kills committed by museum agents connected to a single shadowy figure, an Eastern European gangster with an iron fist, some serious criminal ambition, and a tendency to kill first and ask questions later. This new nemesis is murdering agents who got in the way of their power-hungry plans, and the aging quartet of killers is next. Together, the foursome embark on a wild ride across the globe on the double mission of rooting out the museum's mole and hunting down the gangster who seems to know their next move before they make it. Their enemy is unlike any they've faced before, and it'll take all their killer experience to get out of this mission alive. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so before we dive into this mission, you see, I am a secret serial killer.
Are. I'm a little bit nervous right now, Bianca.
No, I'm pretty thrilled, actually. This is amazing. Okay, so before we dive into the book itself, I would love to pick your brain about process, because you have published dozens of books, many of which like dozens and dozens and dozens of books, and
We're
many
up
of
to
them.
like 20. We're up to like 20. I mean,
Is
don't
it
oversell
20?
it. Yeah,
Well, I mean, there's novellas and all kinds of other things.
I forgot about the novellas. Yeah.
There you go. See, I know more. So, and many of these are in series form, which we know it's so hard to publish because, you know, we have emerging writers on the podcast all the time going, I'm writing a series. And we go, listen, it's not going to sell as a series unless the first book does really well. So maybe don't plan it as a series because it may not turn out that way. So have you found that the writing has gotten easier with each book, or are there still tough books that make you feel like a rookie all over again?
Well, there's a special challenge to writing the first book because you're world building. You're creating a universe that has not existed in your imagination before. You're creating characters that have not existed before. You're trying to give them the right sort of problems, the right sort of plot. And you have to do it in a way that you're absolutely right. You cannot assume that you're going to have 10 books, 12 books, 15 books to tell their stories. You need to assume you're going to have one, but you also want to leave the door open. Because if that first book does well, then yes, the publisher will come back and say, hey, you did this thing, you did it well, people liked it, let's do it again. And you have to figure out how to do it but in a way that's fresh so that people are going to want to come back to a new story with these characters. So you can't tip your entire hand in the first book, even though you're dying to, because you know it may be your only chance to spend time with these characters. So it is the most intense and most maddening tightrope walk ever, because you're trying to strike a balance between those two things. This could be a one and done forever book, or it could be the start of something beautiful. And you never ever know when you're writing it which it's going to be.
And leaving that door open is so important, because I get so frustrated when a book becomes a series, right? A trilogy. And book 2, you can see the author had no plans to write a sequel. They are sitting there. And I mean, as writers, we make shit up all the time, but they are making shit up like really badly. And, so I think it is important to go, okay, well, I'm writing the one book, standalone potentially, but like you say, keeping that door open so that there's a character here who, they may be interesting to bring back in later, etc. So yeah, I really like what you said there. Are you a plotter or a pantser, Deanna? Like, I'd love to know what your process looks like from the second you get an idea until you hand it in to either your agent or your editor.
I am an organized pantser because of the fact that I write mysteries and thrillers. And I do think there are structural differences between writing mysteries and thrillers and writing basically any other kind of fiction. You do have to have more of a structure going into it, I think. At least I do. Because you have to know what pieces of information need to be doled out at what point in order to make sense for your sleuths or your characters who are trying to unravel whatever's going on to move from point A to point G. Well, at some point you have to give them a D. At some point you have to give them an E. You have to figure out how you're going to get them. Where's the trail of breadcrumbs going to go? Now that trail can wind around a little bit. You can have some false starts and some dead ends, but you have to have a general idea, I think, of where you're going. Having said that, I have, upon occasion, like with one of my Veronica Speedwell novels, A Grave Robbery, which came out last year, I turned that into my editor and said, hey, can I have this back? And she said, sure, why? I said, because the murderer is wrong and I need to rewrite the last half of the book. And she said, can you do it in 3 weeks? And I said, yes, I can. And so she gave it back to me and I rewrote it and I had a different murderer because I felt like, ooh, it's going to be a better book. We're all basically doing a choose your own adventure the whole time we're writing because there are limitless possibilities for every decision that we make. And every choice that we make is going to lead us down a different path. There are so many variables. And because of that, I tend to push myself a little bit tight on my deadlines because I want to be able to make decisions quickly. And I won't do that if I know I've got 6 months to write the book. I will start meandering off and I will start exploring options, and I don't need to be doing that. So a lot of times I wait until I'm absolutely just white knuckled with fear going, shit, this deadline is way too close now. And then I go, okay, but at least I work very well under pressure and I make very fast decisions and I commit to them and I write them through and we're good to go. Before I sit down to write the book, after I've spent some time just basically magpieing, where I read the things that I want to read for fun, I watch the things that I want to watch for fun, and I gather little bits and pieces, little inspirations. They may be pictures, they may be snippets of songs, they may be just random ideas that pop in my head. Put all these things down in notebooks. And then just before I'm ready to start to write, I will sit down with giant sheets of newsprint. You can buy them here in the States in great big pads at the office supply store, and they're dirt cheap. I get those and some markers and I sit down and I map out by hand. It's a very stream of consciousness. It may be an actual like little graphic design representation of maybe a mind map, but it's going to be something that is very much hand to paper about creating the plot and how these characters are going to interact with each other and how I'm going to get. And usually it's only the first half of the book that I do that with. And I will procrastinate the second half and go, oh, it's probably fine. I'll get to it. And then I'll sit down and start writing. And I usually don't write. My sweet spot is about 5 to 7 pages because I type very fast. I write directly into the computer word processor. I am a Gen X child. I learned how to type on a typewriter in school that had blacked out keys. So, that's my default. That's where I actually do the writing. So I brainstorm by hand, but I write on a keyboard. And then I just, nose to the grindstone, keep going through. And then about halfway through the book, it'll hit that soggy middle and I'll hate it and I'll hate myself and I'll think this book is shit. I will never write a decent book again as long as I live. That Edgar nomination was a joke. What were they thinking? I need to send my Barry Award back. That's the moment that, oh, this is what it feels like to really be a writer. And what keeps you coming back is you have to put your ass in the chair because you have a deadline. Because you're a professional, because you signed your name to a contract saying, I will have this book ready for you on this date. And that's what you do. And so I turn the book in, and it is always turned in like on a Friday at 5:00, right before the deadline. And then I'll get it back within a few weeks, usually no more than 6 from my editor with her notes. We'll have a little Zoom call. We'll brainstorm. My editor is amazing. And so when Michelle and I talk and we have our Zoom calls, it's more like a pajama party. Like we're just having fun. We throw things at the wall to see what will stick. And we'll be like, oh my God, but what if this person's been dead all along? Or, and we'll have the best time. And then I'll go away and I'll take a few weeks to revise it. And then I hand it back to her. And usually at that point, it goes into production formally. So it goes to the copy editor, it goes to the proofreader. And, that's my chance to panic a little bit more. But usually at that point, I'm pretty comfortable with where it is. And I long ago reconciled myself to the fact that if you were of a mind to, you could tinker with a book from now to the end of eternity. And you can't do that. It's got to go into production. You just have to cut the cord.
Yeah, absolutely. I find I do my best editing after I've pressed send to my agent, and then I'll be every time. And I'll be like, it's great. And then I send it to her, and then I'm like, 5 hours later, I think she now knows, don't open anything from me until at least 2 days later, because it's going to be a waste. And I'm like, oh my God, send it back.
Genius. I need to start doing that. I need to tell my editor, okay, when I send you stuff on a Friday, don't open it.
Don't read it over the weekend.
Don't open it. No, leave it. Let it marinate.
But I love what you said as well about causality when it comes to thrillers, because we often speak about plot points, that the dominoes need to be tipping. You cannot have satellite plot points where this is kind of happening independently of this, while your character's like la la la, especially in thrillers. In terms of the structure of a thriller, it needs to be this domino tips, which leads to the character doing this, which leads to that, etc. And so that causality is so important. You need to understand that one character doing something leads the plot down the line. It gives it that forward thrust. And we often see emerging writers sort of have more satellite plot points because they know that they have to torture their characters. So they torture them with a terrible mother-in-law and maybe a bad day at the job and maybe something happening to the car on the way home, but none of those things are linked. It doesn't show any kind of causality. So not just for thriller writers, always remember that causality there.
Where I think that comes from, part of the difficulty is I read an article ages ago which talked about a study that they did, and I want to say it was Harvard, but it might not have been Harvard, where they were trying to kind of map the neural activity of a novelist. And what they figured out is that the closest equivalent to writing a novel is composing a symphony. That you're trying to hold all of these different melody and counter melody lines in your head at the same time, and you're trying to weave them all together because they are always connected. Every part of it is connected to the rest of it, even if you don't necessarily hear how the woodwind is influencing the timpani. It is. And they're always going to be connected, and you have to pay attention to that. And I think that that's the most challenging thing when we're very early on in our work, in exercising this craft and developing this craft. I think that's the hardest thing to do, is to realize that there is always that sense of interconnectivity, because you are always composing one thing that has to be harmonious by the time you get to the end of it. It has to make sense why this thing was there, because otherwise it's just self-indulgence.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So just when it comes to an idea, Deanna, do you bounce that off your agent or your editor first when you get an idea, or are you like, no, I trust my gut. I know this is a good idea and I will bounce ideas off of her later once the book is read? Or is there ever times when you're like, I'm thinking of 3 ideas at the moment. Which one do you think is the most marketable?
I think it comes down to what I want to do the most. And so if there's something that I'm very much interested in that I really want to do, I will follow my gut. And I'm to the position in my career now where I can sit down with my agent, my editor, the editorial director, and we have lunch every year or two. All of us will meet up in New York City and we'll have lunch together. Last year we had what we're referring to as the teabag summit because there was a teabag wrapper on the table and I jotted notes on it as to which books are coming out in which years because we were like, okay, if I do this book at this, for this year, what do I want to do next? And so I can just give them an idea and say, this is what I want to do. And they'll either say, great, we love that, run with it. Or they'll say, girl, think again. And because I pitched 3 ideas to them last year alone that they were like, oh, not the right time or not the right book or whatever. So I've learned not to get too attached to a specific idea. And I've also learned too that I'm a Gemini, so the bright and shiny thing that has just popped up in my head is always the most enticing, but it's not always the idea that's going to have legs. So sometimes the bright and shiny just needs to hang around for a minute. You need to appreciate it, but then you need to see if the luster dims. And then does it have stamina? Does it have staying power? Is this idea the one that's going to keep coming back to me in that little liminal state when you're just waking up in the morning? Is that the idea that I'm thinking about? Because if it is, then that's the one that I need to go to the mat for.
Yeah, then it's got legs. The great thing
Exactly.
with you writing these series and doing other things in between is you get to cheat on your series character. Because I actually had this conversation with Allegra Goodman, who wrote Isola, and we were talking about how she was writing 2 books at once. Because she started off going, no, this is the book I need to write. And then she got this other idea. And so she started cheating on her main project with her side project. And then she was just gave into it and was like, I'm writing 2 at once. And I think if you write a series, there's a potential that you get, I don't know, frustrated with those same characters, or I don't know, you just want to flex your creative muscles. So I love that in between the series, because I mean, one of them has almost been going for 10 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, I'm writing the 10th book in the series now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but in between you get to do other things. And I think that perhaps is what stops the stagnation or you getting annoyed with one particular story.
Absolutely. That definitely fuels creativity. The very first editor I ever had when I started the Julia Gray series, I got 3 books into it. I was really hitting my stride with it. And she said, okay, now you have to write something different. She said, you have to do 1 book outside the series before we'll let you come back to the series again. And I said, why? And she said, because you always need to take a break. She said, about every 3 to 4 books, whatever you're doing, however successful the series is, if you can manage to do something else, it will refresh you. It will refill that well, because you're going to have, you don't have an opportunity then to get lazy or to get relaxed or to just phone it in. You've got to start all over again, because when you go back to that, for me, when I go back to those big sheets of newsprint and I've got to start building a world all over again, there's very much that kind of baby writer, beginner, oh my God, what am I doing feeling to this, where you're like, did I tap all the good stuff? Like, did I just use it all up? And do I still have a book? And it's ridiculous because of course you have new stuff in you. Like, there's always the debate where people on social media will be like, oh yeah, I have a great idea for a book. I just need to find a writer to write it for me. And I'm like, ideas are not the hard part. I can get 6 good book ideas while I'm brushing my teeth. Ideas are never the hard part. If you're a creative person, ideas are your currency. That they're just what you trade in all the time. You can't turn that off. That's because that's the weird part of our brains, right? That's the part that's always running, always putting pieces together, always drawing connections between odd little things going. It's the part of us that's always playing the what if game. And so, being able to indulge that is such a fresh beginner mindset, and it's so terrifying. And especially, you know, when I wrote Killers of a Certain Age, I had never written contemporary. I had never written a thriller. I had never written 4 main characters instead of 1. So I was out of my comfort zone every possible way. Like, maybe if I'd sat down to write the book in Spanish, it would have been more terrifying. But like, beyond that, this was the scariest thing I could do as a writer. But then when I went back to my Veronica Speedwell books, it was like, oh, this is comfortable, but I have new ideas. I have some new and exciting things I want to do here.
I think it's so important that we keep challenging ourselves creatively, because I think it's so easy to become complacent and be like, oh, I'm in my, comfort zone here. But, I've gone from historical fiction, book club fiction, to fantasy, a group of witches in their 80s bringing down the patriarchy. And now I've just written a closed room murder mystery with choose your own adventure chapters.
Love it.
Each time I do it, I'm like, why the hell do I do this? But it keeps me like energized creatively, and challenging yourself is so important, right?
Absolutely. You know, my husband is the one who pointed out to me ages ago that I will always choose the thing that scares me the most with regard to my work. And he said, you know why you do it, don't you? And I said, no, because it's insane. You know, it makes you so terrified, so angsty, so anxious. And I said, no, why would I do this to me? And he said, because the rest of your life is happy. The rest of your life is dependable. You know, he's my college sweetheart. We've been married almost 35 years. Our daughter's amazing. We have an adorable little grandson. You know, I get along great with my parents. I have like a really boring, lovely, wonderful personal life. There's no drama and no adventure there because it's happy and it's settled and it's committed. So I am always going out on that little, high wire above the crocodile pit with my work, because that's where I get the adrenaline rush, is by scaring the bejesus out of myself and terrorizing myself to say, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Yeah, I can do this, but it's going to scare me to my bones. I am going to chill my own marrow while I'm trying to do it. And that's twisted, but it's also really fun.
It's part of the process, and it's great.
It is.
Keeps the adrenaline going. So something I want to talk about as well is, so emerging authors often approach writing where it's like in compartments. It's like, here is my bit of dialogue, then here is my scene setting, then here is my description, then here is my dialogue. I want to read 2 pages from chapter 1, just to show you how much sentences can do at the line level, how much work they can do to combine all of that in terms of a tapestry, not like dialogue here, description here. Just listen here. Billy, you have a run in your stocking again. Helen's voice is cool as she hands over an unopened package of fishnets. Have my spares. Billy has been in this position before and knows better than to argue with Helen's eye for detail. Just like the last time, Billy says with a grin. She changes stockings and shimmies back into her costume. I think I'm going to have to burn my feminist card when this is done, Billy says as she tweaks her bunny ears in the mirror. 3 months of working undercover at the Playboy Club and her blue satin ears are still a constant source of irritation. Mary Alice, sitting next to her in the dressing room, purses her mouth as she flicks black eyeliner into a sharp wing. She moves back, admiring the effect. I kind of like it. That's because you don't need to stuff your damn bra, Natalie counters from the other side of the room. Okay, so that is just like, it's a few paragraphs. We have got setting in terms of where they are. We have got character dynamics in terms of one is always noticing things and always has spares, whereas the other one doesn't. And you've got the dynamic where the one automatically defers to the other. We've got context. They've been there for 3 months. We know what they're wearing. They're in their bunny outfits. We've got the dialogue, and that is in like 3 paragraphs. So, Deanna, your advice to our listeners in terms of doing this, do you feel like this is something you've gotten better with over the years? Do you feel like it's something that with practice you can do it? It comes in the revising? Or is this now just so intuitive to you at this point that it's not even something you think about?
It's intuitive. I don't even think about it. And the section that you read, that is actually a callback to the opening. It's also a callback to the opening scene of the very first book. So it does accomplish a lot in those few sentences. A lot of it comes with experience. I have read, and unfortunately not continued to read, probably 3 or 4 books in the last week, because I started them and the first, 7-10 pages is nothing but info dump. It's giving me information about this character in dense prose. She did this, then her husband died, and so now she's got it. I don't care. I don't care about this person. That information does not make me care about her. I don't want to sit there and wade through all of that. The editor at Penguin who acquired the Veronica Speedwell series, I'm world building. This is a new series that I'm starting. I'm trying to figure out who these characters are. I turned in the first book and she said, I love it. She said, it's a little bit too long. And these 50 pages right here, you don't need them. And she said, that entire scene was for you. You were figuring out who they were. The reader does not need that information. Cut it. And I did. She was 100% right. That information was just me figuring out, who's Veronica? Who's Stoker? How are they relating to each other? I pulled it out, tightened it up, gave them action. Instead, it was a completely different scene, a completely different beginning to this series. It was dynamic. It pulled people in, made them want to know, because in a weird way, and this metaphor just occurred to me, and I'm sure someone else has thought of it, and it's not very well thought out at all, but I'm going to try this on the fly. If you think of writing a novel as a striptease, because you're revealing things to the reader, burlesque is a lot sexier than walking onto stage naked. Okay? If you come out and you just do a little shimmy and a little bit of the robe comes off your shoulder, and you see the corset. Ooh, that's intriguing. What else is there to see? Oh, well, here are some stockings. Oh, I'm just going to roll down a little bit of it. Okay, well, show me more. Show me more. If you walk out and you're buck-ass naked on that stage, people are going to look at you for 40 seconds and go, yeah, I know as much as your gynecologist now. Thanks. And they're going to leave. They're not interested. They're not invested. You haven't really created any sense of mystery, any sense of, come with me, little wanderer. I have something to show you. You haven't conjured magic for them. You've just laid out a dossier of facts. And nobody wants to read that. Not when they're after fiction. They want to be taken by the hand, because we're all still those little kids who are entranced and enchanted by story. We want story to conjure a world for us. And we want writers to be those fairy godparents who are giving us that little bit of magic every single time. We don't want it all up front. There's no fun. There's no mystery. There's no challenge to that.
Deanna, this discussion has been amazing. Our time is now up. I had a million more questions, but it'll have to wait for our next interview. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for all these incredible insights. For our listeners, we're linking to the book on our bookshop.org affiliate page. Kills Well with Others. Get it there. Support an independent bookstore and the podcast at the same time. Thanks so much, Deanna.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that's it for today's episode. I hope you'll join us for next week's show. In the meantime, keep at it. Remember, it just takes one yes.